What if I told you your phone isn't just distracting you, so it's rewiring you, that every scroll, every notification, every quick English video you half finish isn't helping you learn. It's training your brain to never finish anything at all. And the worst part, it feels normal. That's the trap. You don't realize you've lost your focus until you try to sit with silence and feel panic, until you want to speak English, but your thoughts come in fragments like broken pieces of a life that used to make sense. This isn't a video about using your phone less. This is about reclaiming the one thing that decides your fluency, your future, your freedom, your attention. Because one day I woke up and realized I wasn't learning English anymore. I was just scrolling in English, and that's the day I took my brain back. What happened next changed everything, not just in language, but in life. Let me tell you the story. His hand moved before his eyes even opened. It was a reflex, like breathing. Every morning, the same routine. Reach for the phone, scroll through notifications, let the day begin not with clarity, but with noise. He wasn't choosing his thoughts anymore. They were being chosen for him, by headlines, updates, distractions. The saddest part, he didn't even notice it happening until one morning he did. That day, he paused. For the first time, he heard the silence before the scroll, and in that silence, a quiet voice inside whispered, "Why are you giving your mind away?" Before you've even opened your eyes, he didn't answer. He couldn't. But in that stillness, something in him shifted. Like a sleeping lion, awareness started to wake up. He sat up and looked around. Nothing had changed, but everything felt different. His room was the same. His phone was there, glowing, but suddenly it felt wrong. Not evil, just wrong, like he was living in someone else's thoughts. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized he wasn't starting his day. His phone was. That's when he did something radical. He whispered one sentence to himself in English. Just one. Simple. Quiet. "Today, I choose my mind." He didn't say it to practice English. He said it to reclaim himself. That one sentence, soft and slow, became the beginning of a new identity. A man who owns his mind, not one who rents it out to algorithms. He walked to the mirror, still in silence, and for the first time in years, he saw something he hadn't noticed before. A man holding a phone, like it was oxygen, not a tool, not a choice, but a dependency. He felt sick. It wasn't the phone. It was the way he had let it decide who he was every morning. And in that reflection, he saw a prisoner, pretending to be free, so he made a decision, not dramatic, not loud, just clear. Not today. He didn't quit his phone. He didn't throw it in the ocean. He did something more powerful. He took 5 minutes, just 5, and listened to a story in English with his eyes closed. No distractions, no apps, just words, images, voice, presence. It wasn't about the English. It was about taking his brain back. Those 5 minutes became sacred, a new ritual. No phone until his mind was awake first. And slowly, something strange happened. His focus returned. His thoughts felt cleaner. And his English? It started flowing like water, because the brain that's no longer hijacked becomes a brain that learns. Now, every morning before touching anything, he listens, not to the world, but to himself. 1 minute, one story, one sentence in English, like a seed. And from that seed, a powerful day begins. Not always perfect, but owned. And that, my friend, was just the beginning. If you want to destroy your attention span, it's easy. Just touch your phone every time you feel slightly uncomfortable, bored, scroll, anxious, tap, stressed, swipe. The formula is perfect and deadly, because every time you avoid discomfort with distraction, you're teaching your brain to never grow. And that same brain is supposed to help you learn English? Not a chance. If you want to make sure your English stays shallow forever, just keep switching apps every 20 seconds while you study. Open YouTube, then TikTok, then WhatsApp, then go back to your study video for 3 seconds. Your brain gets confused. It never settles. It never learns. It just dances between dopamine hits. Result? Hours spent. Nothing remembered. If you're aiming for anxiety, this is the path. Consume English faster than your brain can understand. Watch 3 videos at once. Speed them up. Skip anything longer than 60 seconds. Keep learning, but never processing. Your brain isn't a machine. It's a garden, and gardens don't grow when you keep pulling the roots out every 10 seconds. If you want to live in mental chaos, just keep starting your day with notifications instead of intention. Let your first words be, what did they post? What did I miss? And not, what do I want to become today? Begin the day as a reaction, and you'll spend the rest of it chasing clarity that never arrives. Your English? It's just another casualty of the war inside your mind. If you'd prefer to stay overwhelmed, then by all means, multitask while studying English. Listen to a podcast while texting. Watch grammar videos while replying to emails. And later, wonder why nothing sticks. Want the opposite? Try doing just one English activity, slowly with focus, and see how different your brain feels. It'll shock you. If you want to keep feeling like you're not good at English, never sit with silence. Never let your mind settle. Silence is uncomfortable, yes, but it's also where fluency begins. If you can't hear yourself think, how will you hear yourself speak? Try it today. One English listening session, slow and focused, with no other noise. Just you, your ears, and your growth. If you want your thoughts to be noisy and your life to be blurry, ignore this next part. But if you're ready to think clearly again, then start your day with purpose. 1 page of a graded reader, 1 slow audio, 1 sentence that feels like yours. Start with your words, not theirs. Start with focus, not fragmentation. Because here's the truth no one wants to admit. Every small distraction is a tiny theft. A theft of your future, your fluency, your freedom. You won't notice it at first, but over time you'll wake up and realize you can't finish anything. You can't focus. You can't even feel like yourself anymore. But there is a way back. She didn't know when it started. There was no warning. Just one day, she realized something terrifying. She hadn't finished a single English video in months. Only fragments. 10 seconds here, 1 minute there. She wasn't learning anymore. She was sampling. Like eating 1 bite from every plate and never feeling full. And the scariest part? She thought this was normal. She used to love learning. She used to get lost in English stories, repeating lines until they felt like hers. But now she couldn't focus long enough to finish a paragraph, not because she didn't care, but because her brain had been trained to run, tap, swipe, exit. Her attention was no longer hers. It belonged to the screen and the algorithm behind it. Until one ordinary afternoon, something small happened. She turned off her notifications for just 1 hour. Not forever, just one. That hour became quiet, strange, peaceful. And in that silence, her old self returned, like a familiar voice she hadn't heard in years. No messages, no alerts. Just her notebook, and 1 English story. The sanctuary had begun. That night, she did something unusual. She read 1 chapter of a graded reader, out loud, slowly, without touching her phone. No music, no tabs, just her voice, shaky but steady. It felt awkward at first, but also intimate, like a conversation between her and a version of herself she had forgotten. She didn't realize it then, but something sacred was starting to heal. In that chapter, she saw herself. Not the character, but the struggle, the fear, the longing for clarity. And for the first time in ages, she felt the English, not just read it. She understood it like a friend, because it wasn't fast. It was true. That story gave her more fluency in 10 minutes than hours of scrolling had in months. A few days later, she added a new habit. After each reading session, she spoke, just for 20 seconds. Nothing scripted, nothing fancy, just a reflection in English. This story made me feel, or today I learned this. She recorded herself, listened, smiled. Her voice was returning, not just to her mouth, but to her life. With focus restored, something strange happened. Speaking became easier. She didn't need to memorize lines anymore. The words came naturally, like they had been waiting behind a door that was finally unlocked. And that door was called attention. She hadn't lost fluency. It had just been buried under noise, under distraction, under fear. Now each day she creates a little island of silence. One chapter, one voice memo, one English moment that belongs only to her. She doesn't always feel motivated. She doesn't always feel confident, but she feels alive. And that's how it begins. When you take 1 hour back from your phone and give it to your future self. Let's get honest. Your brain was not built for this world, not for 1,000 images in 5 minutes, not for constant alerts, not for 5-second videos with 10-second consequences. Your brain was designed for survival, not for dopamine storms. And that's the real reason you can't focus on English anymore. It's not your intelligence, it's your environment. Every time you scroll, swipe, jump between tabs, your brain releases a little dopamine, a chemical reward. But here's the problem. Your brain starts chasing the reward, not the result. You don't open English videos to learn anymore. You open them to feel busy, but busy isn't the same as progress. That's the dopamine hijack. Silent, addictive, brutal. Now think of this. Every time you switch tasks, your brain leaves behind a shadow. Psychologists call it cognitive residue. It's the leftover noise from the last thing you just did. So when you leave Instagram and jump into your English practice, your brain is still stuck in scroll mode. You're listening, but not hearing. Reading, but not processing. That's why you watch an English video and forget everything 10 minutes later. It's not that you didn't care. It's that your brain never had the chance to deepen. It was dragged into shallow waters again and again. And in shallow waters, nothing takes root. Not fluency, not confidence, not comprehension, only confusion. But here's something practical and powerful. The next time you're about to study English, pause, close your eyes, breathe for 30 seconds, inhale, exhale. Again, why? Because your nervous system is tired. It's overloaded. That tiny pause calms the noise, and a calm brain is a focused brain. A focused brain learns faster. Even just 2 minutes of silent reading and with no phone nearby can restore parts of your attention you thought were lost forever. It's not magic, it's biology. Your brain needs silence like your body needs sleep. Without it, even the best methods won't work. You're not lazy, you're overloaded. And there's a difference, so from today, build a restoration window into your study ritual, a 5-minute pocket of silence before you begin, a phone-free space, no pressure. Just a story, a voice, a slow page, not because it's trendy, but because your brain was never meant to process chaos and learn fluency at the same time. And once you feel that focus return, even for a moment, you'll remember who you were before the noise. Before the rush, before your mind became a battlefield of apps and alerts. And that, my friend, is where the next chapter begins. Did you enjoy the content and it made a difference for you? Click on Super Thanks and support our work. There comes a moment when you stop blaming the world. You stop blaming your phone, your school, your past. You look in the mirror and see the real enemy and the real opportunity. Because the English you want, the focus you dream about, the life you're trying to build, it's not being stolen from you, it's being avoided by you. He used to say, "I just don't have time." But time wasn't the problem. His attention was. He gave it to everyone, to strangers on social media, to headlines he couldn't change, to videos that numbed him. And slowly he realized something terrifying. Every distraction wasn't just a loss of focus, it was a small act of self-abandonment. And it hurt, not all at once, but slowly, like waking up 5 years later with nothing to show, still stuck, still afraid to speak English in meetings, still skipping opportunities, still saying, maybe later, until one evening he whispered a sentence to himself, "My attention belongs to me." That was the day he started taking his mind seriously. He sat down, opened a notebook, and wrote in English, "My dream is to speak fluently, to travel, to teach, to connect." Just one paragraph, just one declaration. And for the first time, he wasn't studying English. He was claiming his future. Words are powerful when they come from your core, when they come from pain and purpose. There was grief too, grief for the wasted years. The mornings lost to noise, the nights scrolling instead of speaking. He thought the phone stole his time. But the truth, fear did. Fear of starting, fear of failing, fear of feeling like a beginner again. But now he knew that grief wasn't punishment, it was awakening. So he made a pact with himself. One English action every day for the version of him 5 years from now. Not big, just meaningful. One voice note, one story page, one recorded sentence. And he imagined that future version of himself, fluent, focused, free, whispering back, "Thank you for not quitting." With that, something fundamental shifted. Focus was no longer a technique, it was an identity. And English became more than a skill. It became a mirror, a way to practice attention, a way to heal the mind, a way to choose clarity over chaos. One quiet day at a time, and each day he asked himself just one question: is my attention building the life I want, or breaking it? That question didn't just change his English, it changed everything. Let's stop pretending your brain is a machine. It's not. It's a living, rewiring, emotional, unpredictable system. And do you know what rewires it faster than any app, any method, any grammar rule? Story, that's right. Not lists, not rules, but story, because story activates the parts of your brain that logic alone can't touch. When he listened to English stories with his eyes closed, something magical happened. His memory came alive. The names stuck. The vocabulary didn't just stay. It meant something. Why? Because he wasn't memorizing. He was imagining. When your brain sees scenes, not sentences, it starts to own the language. He slowed down. No more watching 3 videos in one breath. No more speeding through podcasts. He listened to the same audio twice, slowly, fully. And what happened next surprised him. He understood more, not less. His mind stopped racing. His ears became sharper. He started hearing the music in the language, not just the words. That's called the slow listening effect. Neuroscience confirms it. When your brain slows down, comprehension goes up. And when comprehension rises, dopamine is released. Not the cheap kind you get from scrolling, but the deep kind you get from progress, from understanding, from feeling, I can actually do this. He stopped chasing hard content that made him feel stupid. Instead, he chose materials slightly below his level, easy enough to enjoy, challenging enough to grow. And guess what? That triggered fluency, not frustration. His brain began to associate English with success, not failure. And that changes everything. Then he did something no app ever told him to do. He reread the same short story 3 days in a row. Why? Because each time it got easier, and that ease created a loop in his brain, the neuroplasticity loop. Repetition met emotion, emotion met story, story became memory, and memory became fluency. You see, your brain isn't lazy. It's protective. It doesn't want to waste energy on things it doesn't understand. But when it feels joy, clarity, connection, it says, yes, let's keep this. That's how you learn faster. By giving your brain stories it wants to remember. And so now, every week he does the unthinkable. He returns to the same chapter, not because he's stuck, but because he's rewiring. And through that loop, story, focus, repetition, he's building fluency that no app could ever offer. The secret? He's not just learning English, he's changing his brain. It started subtly. People began looking at him differently. They didn't know what changed. Maybe it was his eyes. They weren't darting around anymore. They were anchored, present, focused. He wasn't half listening. He wasn't checking his phone every 5 seconds. He was there, and in a world full of ghosts, presence is magnetic. His English had always been okay, but now people said things like, "You speak so clearly," or "I actually feel what you're saying." What changed? It wasn't vocabulary. It wasn't grammar. It was clarity. When the mind is scattered, the mouth stumbles. But when the mind is clear, even simple sentences hit deep. In meetings, he used to stay quiet, not because he didn't know what to say, but because his thoughts were blurry. Now, he paused, thought, spoke. And when he did, people leaned in, not because he was loud, but because he was there. Focus doesn't need volume, it needs presence. And in conversation, something even more powerful happened. Trust grew fast. People opened up. Why? Because they could feel it. He wasn't half in, half out. He wasn't rehearsing his next reply. He was listening, truly. And in a distracted world, a focused person feels like a miracle. He even had one English conversation, phone-free, with a stranger on the train. No script, no panic, just connection. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And that realness made him feel something he hadn't felt in years. Proud, not of his English, of his mind. The more consistent he became, the more people noticed. A friend said, "You've changed. You seem so grounded." A co-worker asked, "What's your secret?" But there was no secret, just daily, invisible work, protecting his attention, reclaiming it, training it like a muscle. Eventually, it became part of his identity. Not the guy who's trying to be fluent. The guy who shows up, fully, with or without perfect words, because presence speaks louder than accent. And consistency, it makes people listen, even before you open your mouth. So now, when people ask how he improved so fast, he doesn't say, "I studied English." He says, "I stopped giving my attention to what drains me. I gave it to what grows me." And that's when the real shift happens, not just in language, but in life. He sat in the dark, screen in hand, heart heavy. The English video had been open for 20 minutes, but he hadn't watched a second. Instead, he was lost in another scroll hole. More voices, more noise, and suddenly, a whisper inside, "Why did I lose control?" The answer came, quiet but brutal, because distraction felt easier than growth. He didn't want to hear that, but he needed to. Growth is hard, it's messy. It asks you to sit with silence, to face your self-doubt, to sound like a beginner again. Distraction? It's smooth. It numbs. It gives you something to do, so you can avoid becoming someone new. And so for years, he chose distraction. But not tonight. Tonight, he stood up, put the phone in another room, whispered a sentence in English. "I choose focus today." He said it twice, then 3 times. It wasn't perfect, but it was true. And in that moment, he felt something shift, not in his environment, but in his identity. He opened his mouth and spoke for 60 seconds in English. No script, no phone nearby. Just his voice and the quiet. At first it felt weird, like talking into a void. But halfway through, something beautiful happened. He stopped judging himself. And when you stop judging, fluency finds you. The question came again. Who am I becoming? He didn't know exactly, but he felt it. A person whose attention is no longer a wound, but a weapon. A person who doesn't beg for clarity, but builds it, breath by breath, word by word. And English? It stopped being a struggle. It became a side effect of alignment. He didn't need to scream to the world that he'd changed. He just needed to practice it. One quiet English reflection before bed. No phone, no pressure, just a story, a sentence, a still mind. That became his ritual, and it healed something far deeper than language. So when people asked him, "How did you finally take your brain back?" he smiled, not because it was easy, but because it was worth it. And he answered, "Focus became my identity." And English, it became inevitable. So now I'll ask you something simple, but real. How many moments have you lost to distraction, not just in English, but in life? How many sentences did you start but never finish? How many dreams faded? Not because you weren't capable, but because you weren't present. This wasn't just a video about English, it was a mirror, because the way you use your mind when you study is often the way you use your mind when you live. You don't need perfect grammar. You need attention, you need focus, you need ownership of your minutes, so your future has something to stand on. So here's your question. If you gave your best attention to English every day for just 10 minutes, what kind of future would open for you? And not just fluency, I mean confidence, opportunities, connection, healing, transformation. Because English isn't just a language, it's a door. And attention, that's the key. If this story touched something in you, don't let it fade like all the other videos you've watched and forgotten. Subscribe to the channel, like this video, leave a comment about your own journey, and turn on the notifications, because your next transformation could begin with just one sentence. This is your space, this is your story. Let's reclaim your mind and rebuild your voice, one word at a time.